And we will start the program. Okay, but I'm going to be sharing the screen. But first, let's begin then with the homage to the Buddha. So we join the palms together and we go Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. That's homage to the Blessed One, to the Worthy One, to the fully enlightened one. Okay, I'm going to be sharing the screen. First, I want to close some. Okay. And so now we've been giving a series of talks on what they call the paths to liberation in early Buddhism. Yeah, so in the last month, I gave the talk on the Noble Eightfold Path. And now we come to a particular pattern or presentation of the path, which I call the sequential training. In Pali, Anupubasika, the gradual or sequential training. Yeah, so the word Anupuba means in sequence, and Sika means training. And we find this particular presentation of the path in a large number of suttas, especially in the Digha Nikaya, a longer version, and in the Majjhima Nikaya, a shorter version. And so this is a very comprehensive presentation of the path. So to treat it adequately is we're going to be spreading it out over 3 sessions. So you can see we have the first class. This will be today's class. We'll cover the early stages. And then in the second class, this will be June, July. In July, we'll cover the middle stages of the training. And in the third class, that will be in August, then we'll cover the final stages of the training. And we'll be basing this presentation on the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 27. But as I said, we also find versions of the same sequential training in several suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya. Okay, the sutta opens with a little background story, which I won't relate the background story in detail, but I'll just give a summary. And the background story is interesting because it shows the Buddha's approach to acquiring knowledge. Yeah, so there's a certain Brahmin named Janusoni who thinks that the Buddha he draws the conclusion that the Buddha is an enlightened one because he sees many people converting to becoming followers of the Buddha. And the Buddha he tells the Brahmin, that's not a correct basis for drawing the conclusion that I am a fully enlightened Buddha. And then he gives the example of an elephant hunter who enters into the forest seeking a bull elephant. And when he sees these signs of the elephant in the forest, he doesn't come to the conclusion that that is the sign of a big bull elephant, because there can be other kinds of elephants that leave the same signs behind. So it's only when the elephant hunter actually sees the bull elephant in the forest that he can correctly conclude that is a big bull elephant. And now the Buddha is going to apply this simile to the case of how one draws the conclusion that the ascetic Gautama, that we call the Buddha, is in fact a fully enlightened Buddha. And he does this by presenting this sequential training, because it's when you follow the sequential training to the end, and then you see the truth that the Buddha saw, that you can conclude that the Buddha is a fully enlightened one. Okay, so let us now look at the sequential training. So we start off with, I've blocked off the different sections and I've given them my own titles. And so the first section I call the conditions for the sequential training to be proclaimed in the world. And so here the Buddha starts off by saying that first is that a Tathagata appears in the world. The word Tathagata is a special designation for the Buddha. Yes, so that we have among the conditions here. You see the first is the arising of a Buddha in the world. And then the second condition is that the Buddha teaches the Dharma. And then we have this description of the Dhamma as good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. And it has the proper meaning, and it's expressed properly, so it has good phrasing, good wording. And then as part of the Dhamma, the Buddha reveals the holy life. This is the practice of the path, which is said to be utterly perfect and pure. Yeah, so that is condition number 2 that we have here, the teaching of the Dharma. Okay, then we come to the third condition, and that is that the person listening to the Dharma, who hears that Dharma, acquires faith in the Tathagata. Of course, if once you acquire faith in the Tathagata, it doesn't mean that you necessarily become a monastic, since there are many lay followers who become sincere practitioners of the Dhamma. But in this sutta, the Buddha wants to show the complete path from beginning to end. And the Buddha established the monastic life to provide the best conditions for following the path to the end. And so here we have the case of the person who listens, who hears the Dhamma and gains faith in the Tathagata, in the Buddha, then considers that household life has many obstacles, whereas the life of renunciation provides the best conditions for following the path. And so here we have the person who gives up his or her wealth, gives up the relatives, shaves the head, and then puts on the yellow robe, the ochre robe, and goes forth from the home life into homelessness. And so we could say that now we've reached a point where we've completed all 4 of the conditions for the sequential training. And so those end with the going forth into the homeless life. And now we come to the second major grouping, which is the undertaking of the training in sila, in virtuous conduct. And so I've divided the training, this is the ethical training, I've divided it first into the major principles of the moral training. And you could see that these are major principles are very similar to those observed also by the lay disciples. And so first one abstains from killing other living beings, and instead one dwells with compassion towards all living beings. And then the second is that one abstains from taking what is not given or stealing, and instead one follows honesty. Yes, with the third principle, a difference comes between the monastic and the lay follower. The lay follower observes the precept of abstaining from misconduct in regard to sexual matters, but the monastic has to observe complete celibacy or abstinence from sexual behavior. Yeah, so these 3 principles of right action, And then we have 4 principles of right speech: abstaining from false speech or lying. And then one abstains from divisive speech, speech that creates conflict and hostility between people. And instead, one speaks words that are intended to promote harmony and friendship between people. And then one gives up harsh speech or angry speech, and instead one's speech should be gentle and pleasing to listen to. And then one gives up idle chatter or gossip, and one has to be moderate in one's speech. And so it said that one's words should be worth recording, even in an age before there were tape recorders. Okay, so those are the principles of right speech. And then we have call these the minor ethical observances. Yeah, we won't go into these in detail. Yeah, you can read them on your own. I think we made them available for everybody. Yeah, so these minor principles are not really, I say that they're not really ethical as such in the sense of being concerned with morality, but rather concerned with sort of refraining from luxury and indulgence, self-indulgence. Okay, the third principle here under what I call the ethical training, so again, it's not really ethical or moral as such, is contentment. And this implies that one leads a life of simplicity. And so the text says that the monastic becomes content with robes to cover the body and with alms food to maintain his stomach or to maintain his life. So wherever one goes, ideally, all one takes with one are one's 3 robes and an alms bowl to collect one's alms food. And this is compared to a bird. So a bird, wherever it goes, it flies, taking along only its 2 wings. So we have we have here the birds in New York. In the wintertime, they'll go south to Florida. And in the summer, they might go north to Canada. And the bird doesn't have to pack 3 or 4 suitcases. It doesn't have to take along a cell phone or a computer. When the weather gets a little bit cold, the bird thinks time to go to Florida, and then it just flies down. When the weather starts to get a little hot in the summer, again, the bird doesn't have to pack its suitcases to go to Canada, but it just flies with its wings. Yeah, so this is the ideal for the monk, is to go with only the extra robe and with the bowl to collect the food. Yeah, sadly, many of us fail to live up to that high standard, but we always have this in mind that this is the ideal that we should be following. Okay, then the text sort of summarizes this or concludes this session on it's called the aggregate of noble virtue or ethical conduct. It says that when you possess this aggregate of noble virtue, you experience within yourself a blameless bliss. Because you feel a kind of inner happiness because you know you're not doing anything wrong, anything harmful to others. And you feel this happiness that comes from living a life of simplicity and contentment. Okay, so this then takes care of the training in, we say the training in Sila, in the ethical training. Okay, and now with the next major heading, the training becomes more internal. Yeah, now we are moving in the direction of starting to train the mind. And this begins with the restraint of the sense faculties. And this training of the sense faculties is very important because it's through the contact of the senses that the defilements arise and start to grow, the mental defilements. Okay, so the text says that on seeing a form, a visible object with the eye, the monk does not grasp at its signs and features. Okay, so we have these two terms, two words here. In Pali, one is nimitta, which I translate sign. The other is anubhyanjana, which I translate as the features. Yeah, what's called the nimitta or sign is maybe the general feature of the object. And what is called anubhyanjana or features, these are the detailed features of the object. Okay, so to give an example, so especially for a monk, the most important task is to restrain the arising of sensual desire or sexual desire. So let us say we have a young monk, maybe a young monk in his early 20s, and every day he goes on his alms round to collect his food. And often there will come out a young woman, maybe 17 or 18 years old, to offer food to the monk. So if he doesn't have restraint of the sense faculties, when he looks up, he sees that young woman. So he grasps the sign, ah, a beautiful young woman. Yeah, so that is grasping the nimitta, the general appearance, a beautiful young woman. Okay, and then grasping the features means that this young monk now starts looking at the specific details of the young woman's appearance. Beautiful hair, nice smile, nice figure. So if you see something that you don't like, first you focus on the general appearance, something disagreeable. And then the mind starts focusing on the specific features that make that object disagreeable. So this is why in the next sentence, the text says, if he left the eye faculty unguarded, I think evil is too strong, let's say, bad, unwholesome states of craving and displeasure might invade the mind. So if you let the sense faculties dwell on pleasant objects, then craving arises. If you let the mind dwell on disagreeable objects, then displeasure arises. And so to prevent this, one has to guard the sense faculties and undertake the restraint of the sense faculties. And this really means, though it speaks about guarding the eye faculty, but it really means guarding the mind with mindfulness. So we can't avoid seeing visible objects or hearing sounds. If when we eat food, we'll taste the flavor. So those things can't be avoided. But what we have to do really is to use mindfulness in order to prevent the mind from grasping the signs and features of the objects. Okay, so this applies, as you could see, to each of the sense faculties. So we have the sound, you hear sounds with the ear, you smell odors with the nose, taste flavors with the tongue, and touch tangible objects with the body. Okay, so the first five deal with the five physical sense faculties. And then the sixth is the mind faculty, which has its own type of object, which are called, the Pali word actually is Dhamma, but here it's translated mind objects. Yeah, so this could include all sorts of mental objects like ideas, mental images, thoughts, emotional states, and so on. Yeah, so naturally we will see forms with the eye and so on, and we will think of objects with the mind. So that's quite natural functioning. But what we have to avoid in training is not to grasp upon the appearances of the object, the agreeable and disagreeable appearances. Okay, and then the text describes the effect or the result of practicing this restraint of the sense faculties is that one experiences within a bliss that is unblemished, untainted. Yeah, you could notice a difference here when you're following the ethical training, then you experience the bliss that is blameless because your conduct can't be blamed by others. Okay, but when you practice this restraint of the sense faculties, then you experience the bliss that is unblemished. And the reason this bliss is said to be unblemished is that the mind is now getting gradually free from craving and displeasure, or craving and aversion. Maybe aversion is better. Okay, so this takes care of the third step here. This is restraint of the sense faculties. Okay, now we come to the fourth major stage in the sequential training, and this is called, the Pali word is sampajanya, which I've translated here as clear comprehension. Okay, so the word sampajanya, there have been different translators render the word in different ways, but you could see that the base of the word is the verb janati, which means to know. And it has two prefixes. One is sam and the other is pa. Yeah, if we take just one prefix, we have the verb pujanati. And it's from this verb pujanati that we get the noun panya, which we usually translate wisdom. So this practice of clear comprehension is, we could say, it's the seed from which panya, or wisdom, will arise. Yeah, but sampajanya is not quite the same as panya or wisdom. Yeah, the way I understand sampajanya, it means whatever you are doing, you clearly know what you are doing. And maybe you think, as long as I'm awake, whatever I'm doing, I know what I'm doing. But that's not really the case. When we are doing something, usually our mind is roaming and wandering to other things. So when you practice sampajanya, this means that whatever you are doing, you are clearly aware, you know clearly what you are doing. Yeah, the mind is focused on the activity itself, and you know that you are engaged in that activity. Yeah, often we find the practice of sampajanya is associated with sati or mindfulness. So we have the two together, mindfulness and sampajanya. So often we face the question, how do we distinguish mindfulness and clear comprehension? Yeah, the difference between them is very subtle and sometimes difficult to explain, but I will try my best. So let me try first. I'll say that sati, mindfulness, means that when you are doing something, your mind is focused on that activity. And through clear comprehension, one knows that one is engaged in that activity. Let's take the example of walking. So when you are walking, through mindfulness, your mind is established in the body, or your mind is established upon the activity of walking with the body. And the mind, as you're walking, the mind is not running away to other objects. So that is sati or mindfulness. And through clear comprehension, when you're walking, you know, I am walking. And maybe to make the clear comprehension, to make it more precise, you could be observing when you're taking the right step, you know I'm taking the right step. When you're taking the left step, you know I'm taking the left step. Okay, to give another example, let us say one is eating, let's say, eating an apple. So it is mindfulness that keeps the taste of the apple present before the mind. So when you're tasting something, the apple, your mind is not running away to other objects. And through clear comprehension, you know that you are eating. Yeah, so this is my best attempt to try to explain the distinction. But if my explanations are not clear, just recognize that because mindfulness and clear comprehension, the difference between them is very slight. Okay, so let us now look at the text of the sutta to see how it explains sampajanya. Okay, so it explains the application of sampajanya, of clear comprehension, to various activities of everyday life. So it says that one acts in clear comprehension when going forward and coming back, when looking ahead and then looking to the side. Let's see, when you apply clear comprehension, when you're bending and stretching the limbs. And let's say when you could say that you apply clear comprehension when you're getting dressed. Yeah, you apply clear comprehension when you're eating, drinking, tasting. Yeah, and then where you apply clear comprehension even when going to the toilet. And then you apply clear comprehension in all of the minor postures, walking, standing, sitting, lying down before going to sleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. Okay, now the commentaries to the Pali Canon try to clarify the meaning of clear comprehension by analyzing it into four aspects or four kinds of clear comprehension. And so that might help us to get some understanding of what's meant by clear comprehension. Okay, so the first is what's called the clear comprehension of one's purpose. So this means before you undertake any action, you determine with your mind, what is the purpose in undertaking this action? And then when you determine the purpose, you have to sort of inquire and ask yourself, is the purpose really beneficial? That is it beneficial in terms of the Dharma? Like in undertaking this action, is it going to help me to grow in the Dharma or to become an obstacle to my progress in the Dharma? Okay, then the second aspect of clear comprehension is clear comprehension of the means of achieving one's purpose. Is the means that I'm going to use to gain this to fulfill this purpose, are those means in accordance with the Dharma? Yeah, and these two aspects of clear comprehension are very, very useful in our everyday life, because so often we engage in actions without thinking about whether they're going to really help us to grow morally and spiritually. And so I have the sort of the intention of controlling my speech. And then if somebody is irritating me, annoying me, without any thought, then I just start speaking angrily to that person. Shut up. But when I start to get angry, if I use clear comprehension, then I realize it would not be beneficial for me to speak angrily to that person. If I speak angrily to that person, it's just going to create hostility between us. And it means I'm losing control over my own mind. Okay, then, for example, I might need something, some particular object. And then maybe if I think I can get that object easily by cheating, that would be harmful to me. And so if you have the clear comprehension of the means or method, say the method, then to achieve your goals, you'll use only honest and wholesome methods. Okay, then the third type of clear comprehension is clear comprehension of the meditation object. And this is the way this is explained in the commentary. It means that when the monastic or the meditator engages in any other activity apart from the actual meditation, they still keep the meditation object in mind. Or if they're engaged in any other activity apart from sitting in formal meditation, they still use that activity as a way of practicing meditation. For example, at many monasteries, particularly in South Asia, there'll be a time of day when all of the monks have to sweep the grounds of the monastery. And so you don't think, okay, now I'm sweeping the grounds, so I just drop my meditation. But when you're sweeping, you do it with mindfulness and with clear comprehension. So that makes even the sweeping a kind of meditation. And say when the monks go for their alms round, they do the walking with mindfulness and clear comprehension. Yeah, and so this makes all the activities of everyday life into types of meditation. Okay, then the fourth type of clear comprehension, this is clear comprehension as insight. Yeah, so this is where clear comprehension is starting to turn into wisdom. So in this case, whatever activity one is engaged in, one starts to examine that activity by way of the characteristics of impermanence and non-self. Yeah, but this is a more advanced stage of clear comprehension, so I won't go into details here. So now we could just do a quick overview of what we've covered so far in the stages of the gradual training. So we start off with the conditions for the sequential training. We see the arising of the Buddha in the world, the teaching of the Dharma, and then the disciple acquires faith and goes forth into the homeless life. And then having gone forth into the homeless life, the disciple, who's now a monk or a nun, now observes the virtuous conduct or sila of a monastic. So they observe the major precepts as well as the minor regulations for the monastic person. And then they remain content with the simple material supports, robes, alms food, a dwelling place, and so forth. And then to prevent the arising of craving and aversion, one practices restraint of the sense faculties. And then to deepen the, call this the meditative mind, or to strengthen the meditative mind, one practices mindfulness and clear comprehension in all activities. Okay, I think now we can devote this a little time to taking some questions. And I want to ask my own regular English students to please let the Russian-speaking students take priority in asking questions.
Mm-hmm. So there is a question in chat to me. Oleg, do you have the link for the Russian English video of the last month? Yes, I have the Russian English version and only English version and only Russian version, 3 video separately.
Okay, so the way people can ask questions, you could use the hand symbol in the participant. It will be on the bottom of the, I think, the participant box, or you could send them the questions to Oleg. Okay, so I see one question in the participant box with the hand. This is Lee Halfpenny.
Yeah, thanks, Bhante. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I could hear clearly.
Yeah, I had 2 questions, if you don't mind. One is fairly just an observation on clear comprehension. I wonder if the recent science, not so recent, but since the Sutta has been written, taking left brain, right brain into consideration, into clear comprehension, I think might be a helpful way of looking at that we're always, from a right brain standpoint, we're always aware, but we're not necessarily aware that we're aware. So then applying left brain to the left brain understanding or attention to the right brain awareness that's always there might be a helpful commentary on clear comprehension.
Yeah, possibly, but I don't have the expertise in that area to say anything.
There's a really good book called A Stroke of Insight written by.
I saw her video. Yeah.
The other question I had was in terms of a monastic. Sexual desire is certainly a powerful thing that's hard to control, especially for a young monk.
Yeah.
And I understand that in the Vinaya, it talks about attacking oneself with her hand or something like that in terms of masturbation.
Yeah.
If a monk is not able to refrain from that after trying to do it for a long time, do they need to disrobe?
Okay, so masturbation is not a ground for expulsion from the Sangha. It's not a ground for losing one's status as a monk. What causes loss of status there are 4 heavy offenses, and the one relevant here is engaging in sexual intercourse Yeah, but masturbation, it's a heavy offense, which requires a rather complicated process to be rehabilitated as a monk. But if a monk finds that they can't really control their sexual desire, then they'll face the choice whether they should disrobe or not. But the masturbation itself doesn't require that the person leave the monastic life. Okay, I'll move on to the next question I see with the hand symbol. This would be Alison. Is it pronounced Granha?
Thanks, Mans.
Okay.
I would like to know, I already listened a explication about Sampajana that means introspection. And for example, when I pay attention the breath, what knows that I'm distracted and come back to breath, it was the Sampajana. It's correct, this explanation?
Yeah, I would say in that case, it's Sampajanya that knows when the mind is wandered from the object, that recognizes the mind has wandered. Yeah, and that also Sampajanya when the mind is consistently on the object. Through Sampajanya, you will know that the mind is on the object. Yeah, that is a function of Sampajanya. Yeah, that's a good way to take it. Yeah. Okay, that's the next question will be from Samantha Jayatilaka.
Thank you, Bhante. Yeah, thank you, Bhante, for explaining clearly the difference between sati and sampajana. I think I finally understand it now, because every time before, someone has always said it included wisdom. So now I'm just wondering, I've also heard that term yoniso manasikara, wise attention, I believe, or something like that. So where does that come into it, Bhante? What is that relevant to the sati and sati sampajana?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I've always wondered about that because they seem to be used. It seems that there's a lot of correspondence. Yeah, so it seems to me that there are close correspondences between yoniso manasikara, which is like wise reflection, and this fourth aspect of clear comprehension, the clear comprehension that gives rise to wisdom. But I've never seen either the suttas or the commentary identify the two. Yeah, so it remains something of an open question. What exactly is the relationship between the two? A good topic for a PhD student in Buddhism to do a PhD dissertation. Okay, I could take one more question, and this will be from Lee Mi-hong. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. And you translate Sampajana as like clear comprehension, but Goenka translates like a constant through understanding of impermanence. So it's like anicca. So we are doing sati with like with the understanding of anicca. This is what Goenkaji he explained. I think he doesn't like the translating like a clear comprehension.
Yeah,
That's why it makes me very confusing. That's why.
Yeah, I don't agree with Goenka about that.
Oh,
point.
you don't agree? Oh.
No, we could say that when you come to this fourth kind of clear comprehension in the commentaries, this will include like seeing into impermanence or examining things in terms of impermanence. But in this passage, in the sutta, oh, we didn't translate the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but let me just finish. Okay, in the sutta, when the way we speak about clear comprehension and all these activities, it's not indicating that here one is examining these activities by way of impermanence. Yeah, it seems to me that Goenka takes a very narrow interpretation of clear comprehension based on his system of meditation.
Okay.
Okay, I see one more hand, so I'll take this one more question, and that will have to be the last one.
Thank you, Bhante, for taking my question. I have two questions.
Choose the more
Okay,
important one.
one then. So my question is about clear comprehension. So when your perception, so when you're interacting with something and you perceive something, I thought that there are three ways you can interact with it. Either you like it, dislike it, or neutral.
Yeah.
So if one of those three arise, then what do you do with them? And is one correct, or are all them wrong, or what are those three reactions supposed to be considered?
Oh, that's such a big question. Yeah, it's such a big question that I just have to pass it over it for now. Yeah. What is your second question? Maybe that's simpler.
I wasn't clear comprehending, so I forgot already.
Oh, okay. I just say in regard to the first question that you really have to determine the response based on the circumstances. Okay, I think we're going to have to end because I'll have to go up for the meal now. And so we'll end with the sharing of the merits. Okay, so I'll recite the verses in Pali for sharing the merits. Akasata chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu sasanam. Akasata chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu desanam. Akasata chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu mang parang dukkha pata chani dukkha baya pata chani baya soka pata chani soka pantu sabbepi panino. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining, and thank you to Oleg for the translation. And please join us. The next class will be in July. I don't recall the exact date.
July the 22nd, Bhante.
Is it the 22nd? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so we will be continuing with this sutta in July.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu. Yeah, Bhante. Bow to Bhante Bodhi.